Went to college, did the usual things in his apprenticeship. And I was an apprentice pipe fitter welder. We had lots of regular jobs we had to do, which continually exposed you to asbestos, particularly on heating systems, which is the boiler house where the boilers were. I mean, the boilers, everything on a boiler in those days was asbestos. Every gasket was asbestos. Everything was asbestos, you know. And you'd be scraping all these joints, gasket joints, and they'd all be made of asbestos. And every year you strip the boilers down twice a year and you'd have to scrape all the joints off, and they were all asbestos. Other people were in the area when you're doing it as well. So it's just not you getting contaminated. Everybody else around you is getting contaminated while you're doing all this work, yeah. And the company never supplied us with any protective equipment because it was, in those days, health and safety didn't mean anything. I don't think I ever wore a dust mask until I was about 30, because companies just didn't supply this sort of equipment because it was money, and that was it. I guessed it was mesothelioma. I've always known that it could happen because of the asbestos I've worked with. My oncologist, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, he said to me, I was just about to have some chemotherapy, and he took me up to his office. He said, we're not going to do the chemo today. I went, righto. So he said to me, I'd like to tell you, I don't think you're going to make Christmas. I said, sorry? He said, I don't think you're going to make Christmas.
Oh, Grandad, has the cancer gone? And we said, no, not yet. Well, does that mean Grandad's going to die? And say, no, Grandad won't die. Granddads don't die. And it's that sort of thing where you're thinking, oh, you know, what can you say?
All I was trained to do was the job. I was never trained to do with anything with health and safety whatsoever. It was purely the job. I'm not even sure the guys teaching me were aware of any risks. In fact, they wouldn't have been. I don't think even they were aware of any risks because they were in the same environment as I was in.
We were always going out, always going on holiday, international holidays. Went to Mexico, India, Africa. We had a few more planned, which was Vietnam. We both wanted to go to Vietnam, but whether it will actually happen, it's another thing.
When I was an apprentice, I worked in this canteen. The pipe fitters were doing an awful lot of work in there. And I remember that the tea ladies used to make all the rolls in there. And I went up there and I was knocking off asbestos, and all the tea ladies were working there. And I had about 20 tea ladies in there. And there am I, banging away with hammer and chisel, knocking all this asbestos off. And they're making rolls. And all this dust, and all these women. When you realise what you may have done to other people, it's so sad.
I'll just think of them, am I coming to work tomorrow? Or is Chris going to say to me, do you have to go in? And that's how I take every day. I take every day because of Chris, how he's feeling, and then I decide what I'm going to do. And your brain is just so tired mentally, it's unbelievable. And everybody says to me, well, how are you doing? How are you doing? You know, you're the other half, how are you? And I say, well, I'm fine because I'm not ill. And that's my saying. Nothing wrong with me, I'm not ill, so I'm fine.
One of the big problems I find, especially now, is with the younger contractors, particularly the ones that are in little firms, the one-man band type thing. I don't think they'd know asbestos, as I say, if it hit them in the face. And I think they'd just carry on working with it. They just wouldn't know because they're not getting trained. I think it's disgusting that there are people still being exposed to this material. You know, if we've got contractors coming in that we know are going to start drilling into columns, etc., they're all made aware that there could be asbestos behind it. Not necessarily, but there could be. If they ever go into a building that they're unfamiliar with, and they don't know that that isn't asbestos. If they come across something like that, they treat it as asbestos and they go and report it to somebody. And if that person says, no, we know about it, it's in our register, it isn't asbestos, then carry on.
We don't laugh like we used to. And I think, and I say to everybody, that's what I miss, the laughing. Because we feel now there's nothing to laugh about.
You may be 17, you may be 18, but you're not immortal. And what you do today may have terrible consequences 30 years down the road. And if you want to die of a disease that's not the most pleasant disease in the world to die of, then you carry on as you are. But if you want to live longer than that and not die of this disease, then you take in all the information about it that you're given and take it in seriously. Because the only way you can get this disease is through asbestos.